that. I don't know, Dr. Haney, that the education and awareness around that is provided very well, particularly for the whole. And I'm not speaking of everybody, but for the whole of African Americans. We're talking about the old and the young. I mentioned 5 generations now, 2015. We still find ourselves questionably left out of the political process, by and large. And largely because certain generations did not pass down the essence and the importance of using that, being aware. I think it's important to have voter registration, absolutely. And we saw that during the 60s with SNCC and groups like that. But it's equally important to have voter education and organization, because that's what they had as well. We've lost that. Now, when President Obama came along, of course, riding under the Democratic ticket, great things in the party, African Americans saw my mother, my mother-in-law, my dad, and others in a certain generations, they saw a grand opportunity to put an African American in the White House. And we seized that. That happened. But if we're intellectually honest, there are many people now who voted then who have been disappointed to realize that there's, economically in many ways for African Americans, educationally for African Americans, socially, and even politically, nothing has changed. But it wasn't on President Obama alone. If there was appropriate education and organization, specifically on the African American subgroup, I believe we could have sustained that bump greater. And today what we're seeing is this apathy that comes from being disappointed.
And so in a real sense, there has to be much more activity in terms of organizing and educating African Americans for political participation, regardless of who might be running for an office, which is to say that not to simply go out and vote for anybody, but to be aware of participation and to understand that if you don't participate, then you can't say too much about those individuals who have been elected.
You can, but you won't be taken very seriously. Now, when you speak, now we've seen other subgroups, such as the LGBT group and Hispanic group, they have brought themselves together and established a well-defined agenda. And they put that on the table for political candidates vying for their vote. It's clear where they stand. There's no ambiguity whatsoever about it. If the African American subgroup, who's long been here, and there was a time where it was illegal for a Negro to vote, black man, or colored man, or African American, vote could go to jail and be killed for doing so, teaching them and so forth and so on. In fact, Frederick Douglass was quoted as saying that I didn't know I was a slave until I learned I couldn't do what I wanted to. Which is amazing today. And there are a lot of young people, nobody's physically enslaving them, it's a mental slavery because of a lack of knowledge and
so they need to be educated. There need to be more education in reference, more kind of discussions as the discussions that we're having now in reference to dealing with that. And so we're going to take this second commercial break, and we'll be